I had the honor of meeting her in Nevada more than a year ago. She told me she loved me, and I believed it. I wanted to believe it. Ms. Opal, you're incredible. A daughter of Texas, grandmother of the movement to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. Ms. Opal is, you won't believe it, she's 49 years old. Or 94 years old. You are an incredible woman, Ms. Opal. You really are. As a child growing up in Texas, she and her family would celebrate Juneteenth. And Juneteenth, 1939, when she was 12 years old, a white mob torched her family home. But such hate never stopped her, any more than it stopped the vast majority of you I'm looking at from this podium. Over the course of decades, she's made it her mission to see that this day came. It was almost a singular mission. She's walked for miles and miles, literally and figuratively, to bring attention to Juneteenth, to make this day possible. I ask once again, we all stand and give her a warm welcome to the White House. As they still say in the Senate, and I said for 36 years, if you excuse me for a point of personal privilege, as I was walking down, I regret that my grandchildren aren't here, because this is a really, really, really important moment in our history. By making Juneteenth a federal holiday, all Americans can feel the power of this day and learn from our history and celebrate progress and grapple with the distance we've come, but the distance we have to travel, Jim. You know, I said a few weeks ago, marking the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre, great nations don't ignore their most painful moments. Great nations don't ignore their most painful moments. They don't ignore those moments in the past. They embrace them. Great nations don't walk away. We come to terms with the mistakes we made. And in remembering those moments, we begin to heal and grow stronger. The truth is, it's simply not enough just to commemorate Juneteenth. After all, the emancipation of enslaved Black Americans didn't mark the end of America's work to deliver on the promise of equality. It only marked the beginning. To honor the true meaning of Juneteenth, we have to continue toward that promise, because we've not gotten there yet. The Vice President and I and our entire administration and all of you in this room are committed to doing just that. That's why we've launched an aggressive effort to combat racial discrimination in housing. Finally address the cruel fact that a home owned to this day by a Black American family is usually appraised at a low rate for a similar home owned by a white family in a similar area. That's why we committed to increasing Black home ownership, one of the biggest drivers of generational wealth. That's why we're making it possible for more Black entrepreneurs to access capital, because their ideas is good, they lack the capital to get their fair share of federal contracts so they can begin to build wealth. That's why we're working to give each and every child 3 and 4 years of age, not daycare, but school in a school. That's why we're unlocking the incredibly creative and innovation of the history of our historical Black colleges and universities, providing them with the resources to invest in research centers and laboratories to help HBCU graduates prepare and compete for good-paying jobs in the industries of the future. Folks, the promise of equality is not going to be fulfilled until we becomes real in our schools and on our main streets and in our neighborhoods. Our healthcare system, and ensuring that equity is at the heart of our fight against the pandemic. In the water that comes out of our faucets, and the air that we breathe in our communities, in our justice system, so that we can fulfill the promise of America for all people, all of our people. And it's not going to be fulfilled so long as the sacred right to vote remains under attack. We see this assault from restrictive laws, threats of intimidation, voter purges, and more. An assault that offends the very democracy, our very democracy. We can't rest till the promise of equality is fulfilled for every one of us in every corner of this nation. That, to me, is the meaning of Juneteenth. That's what it's about. So let's make this very Juneteenth, tomorrow, the first that our nation will celebrate all together as one nation. A Juneteenth of action on many fronts. One of those is vaccinations. Tomorrow, the Vice President will be in Atlanta on a bus tour helping to spread the word, like all of you have been doing, on life-saving vaccines. And across the country this weekend, including here in Washington, people will be canvassing and hosting events in their communities, going door to door, encouraging vaccinations. We've built equity into the heart of the vaccination program from day one, but we still have more work to do to close the racial gap in vaccination rates. The more we can do that, the more we can save lives. Today also marks the 6th anniversary of the tragic deaths at Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston, South Carolina. A killer, motivated by hate, intending to start a race war in South Carolina. He joined his victims in a Bible study class. Then he took their lives in a house of worship. It's a reminder that our work to root out hate never ends, because hate only hides. It never fully goes away, it hides. And when you breathe oxygen under that rock, it comes out. And that's what we must understand, that Juneteenth represents not only the commemoration of the end of slavery in America more than 150 years ago, but the ongoing work to have to bring true equity and racial justice into American society, which we can do. In short, this day doesn't just celebrate the past. It calls for action today. I wish all Americans a happy Juneteenth. I'm certainly in a moment, going to sign into law, making it a federal holiday. And I have to say to you, I've only been president for several months, but I think this will go down for me as one of the greatest honors I will have had as president, not because I did it, you did it, Democrats and Republicans, but it's an enormous, enormous honor. Thank you for what you've done. And by the way, typical of most of us in Congress and Senate, I went down the other end of the hall first and thanked your staffs, because I know who does the hard work. No, they're down there. They're at the other end, but I thank them as well. May God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you. Now, I'd like to invite up, while I sign, Senator Tina Smith, Senator Ed Markey, Senator Raphael Warnock, Senator John Cornyn, Whip John Clyburn, Representative Barbara Lee, Representative Danny Davis, Chair Joyce Beatty, and Sheila Jackson Lee, and Miss Opal. You should have my chair. No? Okay. All right. Thank you.
It's okay. That's the first one.
I never understand how Barack did this.
You did it good.
Gotta make sure. There you go. Thank you.
In 1983, Joe Biden, as the top Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee, played a key role in signing the Martin Luther King holiday into law. Now he is doing the same as president with Juneteenth.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I got 3 more. I got to make them on my name. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not for sure. There it is. There's a man. Texas. Did anybody else? Oh, yeah, okay, man. I'm sorry, man.
Congressman Davis.
Using several pens as souvenirs here, the president has now signed Juneteenth into law as a national holiday. CBS's Nicole Killian joins us from the White House. Nicole, I understand you have a little more of the backstory on Miss Opal Lee, who was called the one and only and the grandmother of Juneteenth.
Yeah, that's right. You know, she is probably the preeminent activist around this holiday. Of course, there are more than 80 guests, or around 80 guests at the White House, but Ms. Opal Lee being that very VIP member. She is known as the mother of Juneteenth for her work and advocacy of this, so much so that 5 years ago she marched from her home in Fort Worth, Texas, all the way here to Washington. And so when she watched this bill pass in the House last night, she let out these screams and squeals of joy and said she had so many feelings gurgling up inside of her. So one can only imagine some of the feelings that she is experiencing now, being in the White House, watching this bill now become law, getting that very first pen from the President of the United States, who at the very beginning of the ceremony knelt to acknowledge her, calling her an incredible woman.
Now, Nicole, this bill passed by unanimous consent in the Senate, but in the House, 14 Republicans voted against it. What was their rationale for doing so?
You know, their concern primarily, and this was mostly a number of conservative Republicans, many of whom are part of the House Freedom Caucus. A number of them felt that this was stoking identity politics, and also some of them were concerned about this divisiveness that might be caused by the name of this holiday, which will be the national or Juneteenth National Independence Day. They felt that that conflicted with Independence Day itself on July 4th, and that people would be forced to identify with one or the other. And then some, it was just a procedural issue because they felt that this bill was fast-tracked, it was rushed. I mean, this all came together in less than a week, which goes to show that Congress can really get things done when they, you know, decide that they want to.
Right, and as you mentioned, it really happened quickly, so quickly that tomorrow is now an official federal holiday.
Absolutely.
June 19th, tomorrow's the 18th, but tomorrow's a Friday, so it's a federal holiday. So there you have it. Joe Biden has signed Juneteenth into law. It is now a federal holiday. Our coverage will continue on our streaming network, CBSN, your local news, and tonight on the CBS Evening News. This has been a CBS News special report. I'm Chip Reed.